Let's go out west to California, where Aaron Torres is with us from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Aaron Torres Media, and Fox Sports Radio. AT, I know you were at the Dave Chappelle Hollywood Bowl concert. My gosh, I mean, this was the biggest thing that happened in pop culture over the week, man. I mean, how close to the stage were you?
So it was wild. I wasn't particularly close, but probably 2 football fields away. And I'll be honest, I didn't really see it. It was crazy because it was the show was over. You start walking out, they're still talking, but they're not, the show's kind of done. So you're walking out and you kind of hear a commotion. And, we've all been to concerts or whatever where you can't get a good look at the stage. I know many of you were probably at that crazy Garth Brooks concert that I saw the other day in Fayetteville. But, you hear commotion and then you hear Chris Rock make a joke about Will Smith, and you're like, oh, there, what happened, da-da-da-da. And then, literally 30 seconds later, they're like, yeah, some dude ran on the stage with Dave Chappelle. And so, 2 things kind of stand out to me about it is, one, being there in the moment, it was kind of like a funny thing, like, oh man, like some crazy person ran on the stage. And then, you peel back, a day or two and you realize like the guy had a weapon. One, he's sitting next to somebody all night with a weapon, which is kind of scary in its own right. And then of course what he could have done to Dave Chappelle. And then 2, I was just stunned to wake up the next day and see that it was, kind of like the biggest story in the world. I don't know if you guys have ever been at a concert or a show or a game where it's like the next day, you think it's a fun game, but the next day you wake up and everybody's talking about it. So it was kind of surreal. Like I said, it was kind of almost like funny when it happened in real time, but obviously you read the stories and stuff and you realize that it was a much, much more serious deal. I'm glad everybody's okay. And, obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions about security and all that kind of stuff going forward and stuff like this.
Man, I mean, and we've seen in the NBA playoffs, I mean, all these different protests, people chaining themselves to the basketball goal or trying to glue their hand to the floor or whatnot like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this isn't the first time somebody's run on stage. All this kind of stuff has happened before, but it's been in a pretty concentrated time frame. Things feel like, as far as from the seats to the stage, it's gotten a little bit out of hand.
Well, yeah, no, I hadn't really thought about that, Phil, but you're right. And, obviously you and I are, in the same age bracket. We're old enough to remember a very scary situation with Monica Seles, in the early 90s, which, people can Google. That was maybe one of the more extreme examples of that yet. And it's funny, right, because we all see the videos of the streakers and da-da-da-da, and you think it's funny. And, I'm kind of one of those guys that, I think sometimes some of these NBA players have overreacted if a guy's yelling something or throwing popcorn or whatever. But, listen, I don't want to be the old out-of-touch guy, but I do think, this incident kind of changed my perspective of, maybe the NBA players, maybe, the Major League Baseball players that have seen people rush the field, maybe they have a little bit more of a leg to stand on in terms of, like I said, with the NBA guys, I always kind of thought it was, you're overreacting, people are acting stupid, but let's not make too much of it. But, this really kind of changed my perspective, man. I don't mean to start the show on a negative or whatever, but being there and just, reading the reports, it's like, oh my goodness, man. So, no, obviously, we hope it's all an isolated incident. I will say, I did think the Will Smith parallels, I thought that was a little bit of a stretch, because Will Smith slapped some guy, everybody thinks it's okay to run on stage with a knife. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I can't speak to that, but I will say, Phil, it really did change my perspective on this stuff, because it's like I said 2 times now, is that I thought some of these NBA guys, you're overreacting, but seeing this and being there, I think it probably changed my perspective on it a little bit.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move over to college basketball here. So Muss took time out between recruiting transfers to throw out a ceremonial first pitch at the Arkansas Ole Miss game on Sunday, and I feel like he's got to be brought out like the Yankees use Yogi Berra for good luck whenever the chance arises. But man, I mean now they got a couple of guys that they've targeted for transfers in for next year. Amani Bates from Memphis, Ricky Council IV just visited yesterday from Wichita State, and I guess everybody from Wichita State's left that program. I just don't know how the math works out, and I didn't know how the math was going to work out if Jalen Williams decided to take his name out of the draft. You add even one more of these two guys onto the next year's team. I don't know how the math works out.
They're already at 14.
Yeah, no, it's a question the three of us have been talking about for 3-4 weeks. I don't have all the answers. I was thinking this with Jalen Williams. So this is a super nerdy thing that only I know because I've just been following college basketball and Muss's career. But I think it was his last offseason at Nevada. He took a transfer early, and then he took a couple other guys late. And, some of the transfers that, he took early kind of reconsidered. Now, I don't know what the NCAA rules are on all this stuff, but I was kind of thinking about it even just with Jalen Williams of, if you're already in the portal, can you re-enter the portal if something happens? I don't know. But that was kind of my thought was, obviously the Jalen Williams stuff is ramping up because of the fact that he's been invited to the NBA Draft Combine. That's kind of the event that seems like it really solidifies prospects one way or the other. Either they play really well and it's going to be hard for them to return, or they don't play well and they kind of know that it's probably not their time. But I was thinking about that, and it's something, I should probably reach out to somebody at the NCAA on or somebody that I would know is if you're already in the portal and, your team, the school you commit to just keeps taking players, does that make, Trevon Brazile or whatever reconsider if Jalen Williams was to come back? Now, with Ricky Council, he's obviously a backcourt guy, and, I kind of get the idea. You want a little, you can never have too many good players. It's something, Phil, you and I have talked about since Muss got there is, he's going to figure out, he's going to probably fill most of his, if not all of his scholarships, and then let you figure out the rotation and let you compete for minutes once you get to campus. But when you start talking about extra scholarships, I don't know. And then from Ricky Council's perspective, it looks to me like a pretty loaded backcourt with, two established McDonald's All-Americans, Anthony Black and, of course, Nick Smith. Jordan Walsh is kind of that wing guy, and then Devo Davis is going to be back. And so, I just look at it, and I don't know how they envision him fitting. But again, Phil, I'm with you, man. I'm not smart enough to know how they envision the numbers working. Obviously, you would hope that a player, if they had to enter the portal, would get some kind of I don't even know, man, because now I'm just talking out loud here, is now there's this May 1st deadline where you can't even have a player hit the portal. So I don't know. I don't know, Phil, but I do think if they're bringing players in, it probably means to me that maybe it's a little bit more likely that Jalen Williams leaves than it's expected. But it's a crazy time, man. It is a crazy time.
Yeah, it is, AT. And, one of the guys that Phil mentioned that Arkansas was in their top 6, Amani Bates. Obviously, I've expressed my dislike of him and my ill will. Now, I wouldn't say ill will, but my just disdain kind of for him and everything. And the rumors coming out that, I don't know if you heard this. I heard it thrown around a few times that basically Amani Bates was trash talking Penny Hardaway to recruits, and that's one reason he was told to pack it up and leave. And I listened to your YouTube clip earlier today about Amani Bates fitting with Louisville.
Ooh, whoa. Hey, Phil, did you know you were working with a Kentucky fan? Goodness, oh my goodness. You sound like this is hit that line Kentucky right now with that comment, but go ahead, Drew. Go ahead.
Growing up a Memphis fan, I literally, until I was about 10, thought Louisville was pronounced Louisville. Like, that's just how it was. So to explain to everybody, kind of summarize your 10, 12-minute clip that you put up on YouTube today about why Amani Bates actually is a decent fit for somebody, because I personally don't see it anywhere.
Well, I don't know that he's a decent fit. So, first of all, I think the Arkansas thing, and one thing I always try to warn fans, especially in portal season, it happens in high school basketball too. Just because a kid is interested in you, it doesn't mean that the school is interested in them. And, I don't get the sense that Arkansas is really aggressively pursuing Amani Bates. With Louisville, though, or Loserville, as you called them, listen, new coaching staff, they really, they only have about 4 returning players. A lot of their guys hit the portal. They weren't very good. I don't have their win-loss record in front of me, but obviously when you go through a coaching change mid-season, you're going to struggle, but they were struggling before that. So my only thought with Amani Bates is, first of all, I don't even think he should come back to college basketball. Go to one of these pro leagues, put aside the books for now. If you want to come back to school at some point, do that. But, you were considered a potential number 1 overall pick, and now I don't even know if you're draftable. So go get off the radar, focus on basketball for a year, and try to put yourself in a position to get drafted next year. But if you are going to come to college, I mean, Louisville's kind of a good spot. I mean, it's a primetime program. You're in the ACC. If you play well, everybody will notice. And I think from Louisville's perspective, I don't think there's much downside to it because you know you're only going to get him for 1 year. And, you know, if you turn him into an NBA draft prospect, then all of a sudden you can now sell that as a selling point. Hey, he came here, his stock was kind of low. We rebuilt his game and his confidence and put him in position to succeed. We can do the same for you. So that's kind of my thought on Amani Bates. From the Arkansas perspective, I really don't see it. It feels to me like of the realistic, you know, I can't speak to every single guy in the portal. It seems like Council is the one they're most aggressively pursuing. I know they were pursuing Baylor Shireman. I don't know, you know, how far, you know, they were down his list, the kid that committed to Creighton. But I just bring it up to say, you know, Council seems to be the one. I don't really get the sense that the Amani Bates interest is as mutual as maybe the reports would make you want to indicate.
And as far as college athletics as a whole, the biggest topics for the last year have been NIL and portal. And, you know, now you're seeing Greg Sankey along with the Pac-12 commissioners, who I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce his name because I always get it wrong.
Kliakov, I believe. Because I know you talk about him all the time. But anyway, continue.
They met with some senators up at Capitol Hill yesterday to talk about getting some actual federal help with NIL. Do you think anything actually comes of that, or Congress is going to say, you open this Pandora's box, you got to deal with it?
Yeah, you know, I would say this is, I had a lawyer, Dan Lust, legal expert, sports law expert on my podcast this week. He's a good friend of mine because I felt like, you know, I've been complaining a lot about the current state of things and, you know, rather than just complain, maybe figure out some solutions. And, you know, Dan, I would say, I don't know everything he's been involved in, but I think he's been on some pretty high-level conference calls and stuff. And he seemed to think, this was before the report came out the other day from Ross Dellinger, that federal oversight could be possible. So I took that as a positive sign from him. And for people who don't understand, and I think most everybody probably does, but, you know, a federal law would put across the board what every school in every state is kind of allowed to do. And right now we have, I don't know if it's 50 states with 50 different laws, but pretty darn close, where, you know, like Tennessee, for example, the school can work with the boosters or the collectives together. A lot of states you cannot. You know, John Calipari was very specific about what he can and cannot do by state law this week in Kentucky. And so the analogy that Dan used was, we need this. It's the only way to get it fixed because, you know, there was a time in our country where we had different drinking ages in different states. And you know, this is an extreme example. I'm not comparing drunk driving to NIL in any way, shape, or form. I'm not doing that. But what he said was New York and New Jersey had a different, drinking age, right? And so you drive over one border to get to the other if you're 18, and then you're driving back. And obviously it was a very serious situation. And at some point the federal government came in and said, you know what, we got to get this across the board so it doesn't incentivize people to essentially break the law in their own state. And so, again, not comparing one to the other, but that's kind of the thinking. And Dan seemed to be hopeful that at some point, you know, the federal government would step in. Now, Drew, when that happens, how long that process takes, I don't know. But the fact that it's being spearheaded by Greg Sankey, whose schools, frankly, you know, are benefiting the most from NIL right now, I take that as a good sign that this is something that everybody, for the most part, across college sports wants right now.
Well, we need some standardization for it. There's no doubt about that. And that's why the NCAA kind of doesn't exist the way that it used to, because they were the ones that standardized it, and then they were told, no, you can't do that. So we'll just see what happens in Washington.
And I was going to say, I wonder if Mark Emmert getting out at the time that he did, I don't know if he was out or if somebody might have pushed him out, if you know what I'm saying, Phil. Like we're going to move forward, and you need to not be in the way here.
That's exactly what happened, because otherwise he was given a contract extension before the Alston case was decided, and then less than a year later, I need to, whatever it was, my career's up, retire, or more time with family or whatever. Yeah, retire. I think he was pushed out,
Air
too.
quote, retire.
AT, we're up against it. Appreciate you, man. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both, guys. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, AT.
Aaron Torres from Aaron Torres Sports Media, the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I didn't even get a chance to ask him about his UConn baseball team.
Oh.
You want to talk about there is, of course, there's reason why there's a Southern bias in college baseball, and that's just because
when they start playing baseball in UConn last week.
Exactly. But 37 wins by the UConn baseball team. That's second most in
Look
the
at
country.
the Huskies go. Good for
Second
plucky
most in the
UConn.
country to Tennessee, and they've won 18 of their last 19 games. Drew, the
Good for
UConn
plucky
Huskies
little UConn.
are the hottest baseball team in the country and taking on Creighton this next weekend, but they're in no position to host. RPI is 45. They just can't host.
No, got to play good talent.
And I wanted to bug Aaron about that, but no, I couldn't do it. We'll have to bug him about something else next week. Wrap up the first hour next.
Partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including updated odds on the NBA playoffs, fights, and even next season's futures. And don't forget that the MLB is back as well. Who are you picking to win the World Series? BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so head to the website today or use your mobile device to join and use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.